Hey, let's start the last show of the year.
Ooh, for Thursday, December New Year's Eve's 2021. Welcome to This Is Only a Test, the official podcast of Tested.com. Hello and welcome to, as Jeremy Williams said it, the last podcast of 2020 part 2. Yeah, that's what it feels like. Thank you
2020
all.
plus.
Yes, that's right. No subscription needed for 2020 plus this year. But thanks for joining us this past year. This is our last podcast of the calendar year, and I'm thankful that I'm joined by my two co-hosts, both here today. Jeremy Williams, good to see you.
Cheerio.
Coffee. Ooh, you got a Rec Room coffee mug now valued at $3.5 billion.
That's probably why I have it. Yeah.
They could afford the tchotchkes. And Kishore, good to see you as well.
Now I'm angry I don't have a Rec Room coffee mug for all the effort I've put into that game.
Yeah,
I want a coffee mug too.
I got tiny hats. I got tiny little Santa hats. You know,
are you making elves on shelves? What's happening over there?
Well, here's a pro tip. If you're watching the video, I'm holding up tiny Santa hats. You can get these really affordably. They are, I think, 1.5 inch to 2 inches in diameter, although really they're real closer to 1.5 inch. They're tiny. They're made to put on wine bottles or champagne bottles to make your wine bottles a little extra festive. And I bought a big pack of them because I put them on my tiny figurines.
I was going to say Princess Leia, but pretty close.
I mean,
yep.
Yeah. So One of the things I'll be doing later today, when the kids go to bed, is going around the house. And as I have lots of these 6-scale figures on display, not only in my office, but on the house, everyone's going to get a little Santa hat.
That's a great
I don't want to sound too much like a Grinch, but I just want to say Thanos is not very Christmassy, so he would not appreciate this effort. If I did this in my house, I think that's a way to anger the mad god, and half the universe will get wiped out.
I don't know. Maybe it's the Thanos.
You're not taking into their preferences into account. The action figures, they have feelings too.
Maybe it's the Thanos in What If.
That's right. The one that was part of was it Star-Lord?
Yeah,
right.
Pretty chill guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
I hate this year. Because it introduced that into the canon.
This can be a special episode. We are going to do a kind of year in review and talk about some of the big pop culture and technology and science topics that stood out this year on the second half of the show. But before we get into that, I do want to start off acknowledging a couple things. One, we are recording this on Tuesdays, so the finale of Hawkeye has not yet been broadcast, episode 6. But all I'll say, as presumably you guys have seen episode 5, is what an episode. I enjoyed that so much. Some fantastic writing. It really captured, I think, it made the case for this being a TV show rather than a movie in my mind, because they're the characters that were allowed to have just long conversations on screen that I don't think we would have gotten in a movie.
Yeah,
Fair?
There's been nothing more relatable in this show than watching Hawkeye put ice packs on his knee after going on an adventure. It's been great. I think it's one of the, even though it's not the most expansive, or it didn't generate the most like week to week buzz on what's going on, or visually fantastic, it's been the most enjoyable because it's so contained and so in line with the kind of holiday oeuvre, if you will.
Yeah. Jeremy, have you seen it?
Yeah.
Episode 5? Yeah, agree?
Yeah, I thought it was a very satisfying episode. I'm a big Florence Pugh fan, and so I was glad to see her take a larger role. This is all coming together.
Spoilers, hashtag, in case you were not expecting that.
Hey,
Marvel has tweeted that out. They have a character poster. That's all we'll say about that.
It's been a week. I
It's
think
been a
that's
week.
if there's a whole new episode out today, as this airs, I think this is fair game.
Yes, yes. But don't worry, we're not going to spoil the big thing that I don't know how many millions people have seen already. I will say that Spider-Man: No Way Home was released this past week, of course, to $260 million at the box office in North America, which makes it the number 2 biggest film opening weekend of all time,
How is this
US based.
possible? How?
I the Let me tell you this, Sony's projections, their public projections for opening weekend was 140 to 150 million dollars. They exceeded their projections, the anticipated by ticket sales. They exceeded it by one whole original Sam Raimi Spider-Man opening weekend,
How do you
which
go
was the first film to go over 100.
from an entire year of releasing theater films at home because no one will go see them in the theater to giving it a shot and getting the second place of all time, like right behind Avengers Endgame?
I think it's too soon. I mean, I think the hype and the marketing and glowing reviews, like, I think last week we talked 98% Rotten Tomatoes. It was universally acclaimed, A+ cinema score. The word of mouth was so high. The anticipation of this being the conclusion of the John Watts, Tom Holland Spider-Man trilogy in the MCU, that felt like Endgame like in it being ramped up to something. The trailers and the posters tease enough mystery and without giving away too much, I'll say, that people wanted to make sure they were in the seats to not be spoiled for any reveals that were going to be happening. And then, I think there's just general awareness also in the US that this holiday, the Omicron variant is going to be, it's already like, Kishore, correct me if I'm wrong, 70% of cases. And so
that actually might be wrong.
You are so correct.
It could be even more than that. But
No. It actually might be just a mistake because that was algorithmically generated by a
got it.
CDC thing called Nowcast.
Mhm.
And it doesn't sort of line up with doubling numbers that we'd expect. It's like a little aggressive. We think it's I'm waiting for some clarification from the CDC. I think the number is probably a little less than that, unless some other projection from earlier was off.
I take that good news wherever we can get it. But the idea is that this could have been a last hurrah for a lot of people to watch movies in theaters, and they wanted to make sure they got in on it before the things got a little darker.
I am not surprised there is a large number of people who did that. I am surprised that there were this many people that did that. Like it's almost like nobody remembered that there was Omicron variant going around right now, that this is definitely a winter month during COVID, which is still very much here, and everyone went to see the movie, and I'm jealous because I want to see this movie too, but I have not taken that step yet.
Yeah. I mean, who knows what in a normal world what this release would have been like, right? Could it have beaten Endgame even? I don't know. That seems untouchable. A 300+ million opening, but. Without going to spoilers, because I know there are probably many of you out there who haven't seen the film, I will say I did go finally find a midday showing in a small screen, and I enjoyed the spit out of it. It was emotional, cathartic. It was joyful, and I agree with all the critics. The A+ cinema score I think is well deserved, and I can't wait to see it again. One bit of technology related story to that is I saw it actually in a Screen X theater. Have you heard of this? Screen X?
I mean,
Our local.
You got the 4D. You got I don't. What is it? 4X?
Screen X. So yeah, it's our local Regal Cinema has it, and didn't go to the AMC, didn't do IMAX. That was too impacted, too packed. But all the theater chains have been coming up with new ways to market their premium seating, right? Like you said, there's the 3D ticket sales, there's 4DX, which I think is 3D plus, or may not even be 3D, but it has the rumbling chairs, right? Some cinemas have it as what's it called, where the seats are programmed
like Sensorama.
D-Box.
D-Box, that's the
D-Box.
one. D-Box, yeah. And then everyone has their IMAX large screen equivalent. I think at Regal it's called RPX or something. And so I was like, "Ooh, I'm just gonna get the one that looks like it's the bigger screen. I want the better sound system." And I got into the screening room, and it was not a massive screen. It looked like just a standard size screen. The trailer started playing. Like, okay, the sound's okay for the trailers. Maybe it'll be better for the film. It wasn't a Dolby Cinema. That wasn't like incredibly bright and vibrant like I've been used to from the Dolby Vision stuff. And then they started playing this pre-roll for the movie of like, ooh, you've bought into the ScreenX experience. Let me show you what this is. And suddenly the walls started playing imagery. So what this is, it's a 270-degree version of certain scenes in the film.
Hmm.
So in addition to the rectangle in front of you, the adjacent walls also, the scene extends to the adjacent walls. And you're wondering, how can this be? Right? Like, is it like that Philips system where it just lights up to the colors and it picks, what the dominant color on the image is at that moment to give you some like ambiance, extra
Yeah.
ambiance to take away the frame of the cinema? No, it's like when the movie started playing, I was looking, okay, is this like extra CG? It looks kind of a little bit blurry. It's like video. Like there are crowd scenes and you see extra crowds to the right and left. There are battle scenes you might have seen in the trailer for No Way Home. There's like a overpass scene. It's extra highway on the left and right. Like the hands of characters go from when they're normally cut off by the frame, you see their hands on the other side, and it's not CG. It's actually video. So I did some googling. It's been around since like 2013. A Korean company started it, but they have a deal with certain studios, and Sony is one of them as a partner. And they actually, like an IMAX partnership, will go to the directors and say, well, we've made a deal with the ScreenX, and so while you're making this film, please, director, choose 4 scenes that we can enhance the experience. And it's not just like, oh, they used a different lens for the camera. They have 2 additional cameras set up for those shots that are filming. So there's a whole separate post-editing pipeline where they have to add CG, process the film, and add extra viewing angle to the left and the right
You're saying
of the main
ScreenX
screen.
impacts the actual production of the film in some way?
I mean, just like IMAX does it in a certain way, like directors like Denis Villeneuve or
Yeah.
Christopher Nolan says, I'm filming in IMAX, so I'm going to use a IMAX certified camera, and I'm going to use IMAX certified lenses, and then I'm going to film quote unquote open matte, right? So you're going to film at a 4:3 aspect ratio, and in the post, the editor, the cinematographer will say, okay, I envision this scene to be in the 4:3, but we're going to crop it to 16:9 for, Limax, and we're going to crop it to standard 21:9 CinemaScope for normal screens. Here, it's not just an open matte. They actually had extra cameras to the side.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the director sees it as, hey, maybe this will get people in the theaters, and that's why I want people to see my film. Whatever it takes. So let's give it a shot. Roll the dice.
I'll tell you, it actually was detrimental to the experience because the alignment wasn't always perfect. There was like a slight latency delay. Like, when there'd be a scene change, it would like a fraction of a second, maybe 1 or 2 frames off. And that was jarring. I was distracted. I was always looking to the left and right. Like, is this CG? Is this real footage that they shot? And then, because the walls of a cinema are typically long, right? You are certain distance from the center screen itself. When the side walls are illuminated, and you're not wearing 3D glasses, so it's not like it adds for parallax or allows for extra stereo.
Probably wouldn't work with 3D glasses because you're kind of blocked when you wear glasses.
Yeah, absolutely true, right? But I could see if watching I always think of Captain EO, right? Like they really push the 3D limits, and they have things like fly right up to your face, right? To make the audience grab it. If you had extra peripheral detail and then things are coming to your face, then you have an illusion of foreground background. Here, it actually made the center screen feel smaller. The action feels smaller because this inessential action was put on the sides of the screen. It wasn't as bright. It wasn't perfectly timed right. Um,
It's
so
like
I would
foveated
not
rendering in the
recommend.
real world.
Yeah, you know what it felt like? The VR analogy is perfect because it felt like wearing one of those like Pimax headsets where they would just
Yeah.
stretch the image and it would be lower resolution and blurry and the optics aren't right. Like here it felt exactly like that. The optics felt stretched where you're not supposed to look at it directly. It's supposed to just be in the periphery. So wanted to
Do
share
you
that
remember when
experience.
going to movies was like you'd watch the movie and then you'd go home and it was just like there's none of this extra stuff. There was like a chair and popcorn.
Sometimes the chair rumbles. Sometimes popcorn's delicious. Yeah. This is what I paid the extra surcharge for to watch it in a relatively empty Screen X theater. Like I said, I still enjoyed the movie. I would not recommend Screen X. I think it's good for exhibitors for trying something new, but it's no IMAX. IMAX vertical field of view, just like in a headset. Sometimes vertical field of view is more important than horizontal field of view. Leave it at that. Uh, and then as we're recording this, The Matrix Resurrections is going to be on HBO tomorrow morning, I think at 1 a.m. Pacific. So we haven't seen it yet. The reviews have dropped. It's apparently very divisive. Some of the people I trust, Devindra, who's guested on this podcast, loved it. He
Hmm.
reviewed it for Engadget and said he really, really loved it. So I try. I'm usually in line with his taste. So I'm looking forward to it. And that's one, of course, we can all watch at home with an HBO Max subscription. Uh, One last bit. PSA. I haven't seen Encanto yet. That was the Disney animation film, Walt Disney Pictures animation film, and it's going to be on Disney Plus without a surcharge, just free for everyone. This Friday on Christmas Eve. So much like what was it last year? Soul was just free for everyone, and that was a day and date release. They just made that a Christmas movie. Here, it's going to be Encanto. So I'm looking
Yay.
very forward to that. Um, Last few bits. Oh, Kishore, you have a bit of science update. You wanted to give a shout out to a telescope.
Yeah, the real holiday this year isn't Christmas, but it's the day before because the James Webb telescope is actually launching this Friday. This telescope, which is famously 10 years late and almost $8 billion over budget for a telescope that was supposed to cost between 1 and $3 billion, ended up costing 10, is launching, but this is the successor to Hubble. It's actually going to be able to look at the origins of the universe using infrared light. So there's a lot of visible light that Hubble used to actually image the earliest parts of the universe. But the problem is a lot of those like dust clouds that are out there kind of obscure that light, and the shift that is caused from wavelengths, the infrared spectrum is going to be able to see things that Hubble was never able to image before. So it's an extremely exciting launch. We've been waiting for so many years, and at the same time, we have this like single point of failure. We have a rocket going up with a $10 billion payload on it that we've been waiting almost 20 years for. At this point, it's going to take a little while for it to unfurl and get into position. It's basically flying about 1 million miles away from the Earth to position, but it's huge news. I'm waking up to watch the launch on Friday because this is one of those like awesome moments. It is the equivalent of the launch of Hubble, except it might let us see even more of the universe.
Is it going to one of those gravity dead zones?
Yeah, it's like the epigee or what's it called, that point in space. Yes, it is going to one of those.
Wild.
Hubble became such a ubiquitous phrase like growing up. Every time you'd open a textbook and you see the images, and it would be imagery from the Hubble Space Telescope. So it's cool that hopefully years from now, when we're starting to get lots of the data from from James Webb, that becomes synonymous with the imagery we get that kids will grow up with.
Is it solar
I don't know.
powered?
Yes, it is. And I don't know why I said epigee. It's the Lagrange point. It's going to the L2 point actually, and unlike Hubble, which orbits the Earth, James Webb actually orbits the sun.
Oh, it is in orbit then. Oh, wow. Okay.
Mhm.
Huh.
Very cool. Before we start getting into this end of year wrap up, I wanted to share one thing. This will be mostly for folks who are watching the video, but I'll try to do my best to paint a word picture. I got some new 3D printing filament in from Matter Hackers, and I'd seen some folks, Joel, 3D printing nerd, test some of this stuff. But this is their quantum PLA filament, which in the video, ooh, I think it actually shows off pretty well. It's an iridescent filament where it's actually two tone, and when it prints, depending on the angle you look at it, it's one color or the other, another color. And they choose these nice complementary colors. This one here is, I believe, blue and yellow, but it looks to the eye, it looks green because the filament is just in many places just at the right angle where it looks blended. And then I printed out this dragon, which I found on My Mini Factory, and this is one of those print in place designs where it just sits on the bed, no supports necessary, and it pops off, and it's a fully articulated, delightful dragon. I'll include a link to it in the show notes. If you want to Google it and you're just listening to the audio, the designer, I believe, is what's it called? His name is Mick Guybeer. So MGGYBEER on My Mini Factory. And for $4, you can pick up this design and print this out. It prints out really, really well on FDM printer. And I'll tell you, the kid loves this thing. This doesn't belong
Nice.
to me anymore. This belongs to the kid.
It's the perfect object to print with that filament. I love it. Well
Yeah.
done. And I'm glad
Yeah.
to see you printing FDM again.
Yeah, yeah. I had that conversation with Joel when he guests on the podcast of like, I love resin so much. Like, what are the, why go back to FDM? And this is exactly a perfect use case. Like, I would not want to print this in resin. It would get too messy. There would be nooks and crannies here that, would get sticky that I couldn't really cure. And this on a flat bed with no supports has that nice bottom finish of a heated build platform. And you barely see the print lines. I print this at I think 0.16 micron or 0.16 millimeters, 60 microns. So it's the end of 2021, and the bunch of stuff. I had to actually do some googling to look at what news stories, what things we talked about this year. And I don't think we're gonna do this in necessarily chronological order, but I think it's nice to kind of look back and wonder if these big things that were trendy or that were at least newsworthy, whether we think they have legs, whether they become things that have lasting impact, or just things that we'll associate as that weird thing that happened in 2021. You guys remember back in January, the first thing I want to talk about is meme stocks. Meme stocks was like one of the biggest things. It just consumed tech culture, finance culture, and it feels like a lifetime ago. But meme stocks was like the first big tech viral event of 2021. Of course, this was with Reddit and their the subreddit of folks looking to buy GameStop and AMC stock and the SNL bits and all the commentary that followed. What do you think? How do you guys, when you look back at that, has that had any lasting impact? Or now that we are 12 months from meme stocks as a phenomenon, is it still a thing?
I am not getting back the gray that came into my beard watching CNBC that morning and having some commentator ask somebody what is a meme and have it defined to them on national television. I will never get that time back. I to me it was more of a symbol of like we had so many people that were bored and had some money, and this was a consequence of it. And uh, we haven't seen as much reporting a year from now, where all like the people that invested in those meme stocks are now, especially the people that lost money. But all of a sudden, it like exploded the culture of day trading, which is quite dangerous depending on your financial situation. So, at the end of the day, I'm going to mark this down as a pretty, not great sequence, but an indicator of just the craziness of that period where people had money and nothing to do.
And the power of virality of social media, right? Whether you consider on Twitter, TikTok, or even forums like Reddit, the active, communities that could, and then tying that to the ease of access to things like to buying traditional stocks with Robinhood as an app, definitely has quieted down. And maybe those people who were bored and had a lot of money have now shifted their attention to the other massive cultural phenomenon this year, tech culture phenomenon, which is, of course, NFTs. And this might be like, if there's one word to define like the ridiculousness of technology in 2021 and kind of the inconsequential nature of that tech, it might be NFTs, or it might be the thing that we're all talking about and still talking about for years to come. I really don't know, and where we're going to be on this in a year, in 3 years, in 5 years. But of course, NFTs, I think March was when we first started talking about it. Everyone did their explainer piece. It's moved into, it's almost, I hear more people. I mean, it's like a sub. It's born out of blockchain and crypto enthusiasm and understanding, and maybe not less so even understanding. But I almost feel like more people are talking about NFTs in the mainstream than crypto in general. It's like, even though it's based on the same underlying technology, people aren't talking about Ethereum like they are just the phrase NFT in just common discourse. Is that how you guys have felt as well, Jeremy?
I mean, I don't want to get into NFTs, man. It's a dangerous territory. You get people who get very upset with you no matter what you say. I, you, when we first started talking about it, I came out very hard against it, and I do think that it is a very, I mean, to think that you own anything that can be copied, an infinite number of times, it just seems very odd to me that anybody would buy into that. However, I kind of, having gotten addicted to World of Warcraft at one point in my life, and invested quite a lot into these, virtual items, and buying things online that were only kind of existed in my imagination, and, in the game that other people could see. I kind of understand wanting to bring these, like, this sense of ownership of digital items into the real world. I kind of understand that. I Whether or not NFTs, plays out. I mean, obviously it has for certain people. There's a lot of very legitimate artists that I have a lot of respect for that are selling NFTs, and I'm very happy that they're making money, because these are people who, go paycheck to paycheck, and that's how they live. And for them to actually find a well of like good income, this is great. It's, clearly people with a lot of disposable income that are buying these up, and whether they're worth something in the future or not, I think that's a gamble. But I kind of get it, and I'm glad that some people are making money at it.
I, I feel two things have stuck out about NFTs to me. One was watching this story a um uh, of a guy that was mining crypto to buy NFTs, and he had set up like a whole farm next to like a water dam to mine crypto. And then they're like, "What are you doing with the crypto?" He's like, "I'm investing in NFTs." And it just felt like this weird cycle, hearing the interview with this guy that was in his mid 20s, and he had bought into this like whole other version of the internet that feels distant to me. And the second was something that Brian Eno said, and he like the interview came out recently, and he was pretty negative about NFTs, but he said something that Jeremy echoed. Is he said there's so many artists that have been left out of like the capital economy, and this is a way for them to make money, and a lot of them are jumping for the chance. But that's not why he got into making art, and I think that's easier for him to say given who he is and how successful he's been. But I think that tension is there. I don't personally understand NFTs from a art perspective, uh, but there is like a whole. It's undeniable the culture that it's created, and it was a subculture. It's no longer. It is just straight up culture at this point.
Yeah, I mean, there's both sides of that artist equation where we follow, all of us follow artists who have started minting these and make and turning it into kind of extensions of the idea of their, like, what Patreons used to be, of getting some direct support from their fans, and those fans feel like they have some kind of co-ownership or investment in this, but it all still feels very much like the Wild Wild West, in that it's very low. There's a lot of, like, just fake pricing. People, because it's all bought in through the blockchain, so artificial pricing on some of this stuff to jack it up. So some people getting scammed that way. A lot of fake or unlicensed art getting stolen and minted, and so the lack of verification, I think, is an authenticity. You have artists and people who own the art saying all the time, people are just downloading my DeviantArts and making and minting them in the NFTs when they're not getting directly benefit because it's so easy.
But
And
I
all
feel like
this is
that's a different problem entirely. Like the NFTs exist on the blockchain, and they're like, that's the reality of it. Like that's the thing that is real, quote in quotes. And like that much is true. So like if you're gonna buy something, if it's gonna be a forgery, you're still gonna have the NFT for that thing. Like that's what matters. Like
right.
if you're buying illegitimate artwork, that's the real world. That's just forgeries, and that's gonna happen regardless if you're paying in cash or if you're paying in Bitcoin.
And that's a thing that is unresolved currently, like what it means, right? It could very well be that forgery because of the market price of it, because of its existence as a forgery and the history of ownership or whatever that legitimizes it in the mind of whoever currently owns that piece, right? Like, who knows, right? That's what this culture, I guess, is embracing and still figuring out. But when you have big organizations like the NBA, really, like, sports organizations leaning into this, and video game companies incorporating it into their microtransactions, like that, to me, waves a flag of cynicism of, like, they're seeking legitimacy or catching this wave, but really betting a lot of their reputation on this. And it's kind of like the existence of the blockchain itself. It's this trust system of, like, the more people believe in it, the more this thing is going to be sustainable, and the more these things are worth. And so, uh, regardless of the ethical and philosophical implications, like you said, it is a thing it, the numbers are there, the calculations have been made, and the tokens are out there,
Hey,
right?
the only reason paper money's worth anything is because enough people believe in it.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. It's
Hey,
true.
same is true of Santa Claus.
Gotta have that what is that spirit meter, right? In Elf.
That's right.
What if that you gotta raise it, yeah, and start singing in the middle of Times Square. So I think we're all kind of hedging our bets here. Like, none of us want to say if it's going to be a thing 5 years from now. I'm going to make us say it. I think NFTs will absolutely still be a thing 5 years from now.
I totally think they're here to stay, but here to stay in what fashion? Are we only talking about them in the context of digital art, or is there something else that really starts to take off? I don't think it's in digital art for long.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind having the deed to my house as an NFT, as like a backup. Why not? There are real things that I'd like to have on the blockchain.
Yeah,
Well,
and
I'm
there
going
are
to
a bunch.
screenshot the hell out of that deed. Right click, save
Right
image
click. That's
as.
right. Right click save as JPEG. Yeah, and you see, like, a bunch of this whole cottage industry of ancillary companies popping up to to legitimize those NFTs in display, virtual museums, and we'll talk about the metaverse, but even that company Spatial that we covered, right, which was a VR and AR company that was about collaborative workspaces. They had an equivalent of Facebook Workrooms before Workrooms. They've completely pivoted and now are an NFT, like, display company, right? Um, so I think we'll be here to stay. I think there's enough money behind it to ride it at least for the next 5 years. Um, Moving on to media, we talk about this every week, but it really does feel like it's been peak streaming. But I feel like this past year, especially because of so many people working from home because of production ramping up again, and because of a consolidation of these services, we finally feel like every big media company has their streaming service out there. First it was your Netflixes and your Hulus, and now it's Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, HBO Max, Discovery Plus, uh, Paramount Plus, and all the smaller ones kind of getting eaten up into those ones as well. How much do you guys? We talk about how many streaming services feel like the right amount, but have you looked at your streaming service bills lately?
This is funny you ask, because YouTube TV just announced that they had not come to a deal, right? With who was it? Disney?
Disney.
And so they were going to drop ESPN and other Disney content, and they apologized. And I was like, "Oh my god, I subscribe to YouTube TV." It has been
$65 a month.
It has been a year since I subscribed to that, and I completely forgot about it. So that is like $600, $700. And so I immediately unsubscribed, and then they wrote and said, "Hey, we came to an agreement with Disney. Everything's all good."
And
I'm
here's
like,
$15.
like, forget it. See ya. So yeah, no, I definitely have checked my bill accidentally recently and removed the biggest offender.
Oh my god! And we're just talking about video, right? We're not even talking about the music services and how much and people pay from your Spotify's to your Apple Music's, and does Tidal even exist anymore? I don't even know.
Tidal? Yes, it does. It was just included in Tesla's.
Oh my god! Oh my god! And Tidal, and Pandora's, but maybe this is just a PSA. Check your bill. See how many streaming services. See if you're actually making use of all of it, because I'm certainly not watching everything right now. And it used to be the a la carte model was so appealing because you think you would be paying less than cable, right? You'd be sticking it to your Comcasts and your direct TVs by paying less than the $100 a month or whatever it was that they charged you. But I guarantee you there's many of you out there who are paying way more than $100 a month if you include your Amazon Prime subscriptions and your Apple TV One bundles a month on content that you may not be watching. The YouTube TV of it, I think that feels like cable TV now. Like, Kishore, you were early on YouTube TV.
I'm gonna, like, do you have your bleep button? If you get me talking about YouTube TV, you're gonna have to call in the censors. I'm over it. It is cable. It is basically just cable TV. The same issues we'd get with cable. Like, man, they are not being fair and negotiating with us. We're gonna have to drop this. I had two of those sets of emails from YouTube TV in the last 2 weeks. One was about just like, can you even watch YouTube TV on Roku, which is like the most dominant, streaming hardware out there. And the second was Disney. I'm just done with it. It's expensive. It's not that great. I've had all sorts of problems with the interface. We limit ourselves to about 4 streaming services. And when I say about 4, is Amazon's the one that's weird because I just pay for that because of Prime. And I have to say the one that I might go back on is Disney, but I prepaid for 3 years when it launched. And that's what has me locked in. And I'm really trying to, going into next year, be much more subscribe for a month or two and then deactivate with many more of my providers. I think Netflix is the one I tend to just keep the most consistently because it has the most range of stuff that fits within our family. Disney has had the most like appointment viewing because I'm a big Marvel honk. Uh, and Apple's probably had the most interesting quote unquote shows in terms of range, like going from Ted Lasso to Foundation to Schmigadoon. It's like all over the place.
Nice.
And so I'm just going to orient differently to it going forward and just try to be really disciplined because that's the only way to make it through the streaming wars without losing $600 accidentally.
How long do you think it's going to be before there's maybe legislation or regulation in allowing users to unsubscribe more easily to this stuff. And I know it's going to be on each of us to remember. Like, it's so easy to forget when it's something like $5 a month for Apple TV Plus, where a year that's $60. But when it's YouTube TV and it's $65 a month, and there are on seems like regular disputes with other content rights holders. The other thing that I find that sucks is as all these as the IP owners start spinning up and have spun up their streaming services, the catch-all places like, what used to be cable and what YouTube TV is now, seems to be losing. We're losing, like, we lost Star Trek on Netflix. We lost, South Park on Hulu or wherever it was. Like, you have to go directly to those providers, um, and then there's too much. It's like there's just, because everyone is has their own service. Everyone has their exclusive stuff, and Netflix is a perfect example. They'll spend $200 million on a movie, and it'll feel like that movie never existed. Like, no one talks about the Irishman in the same way we talk about any other Martin Scorsese movie. The big Ryan Reynolds, Gal Gadot, and the Rock movie that came out. It's like the analogy of them. They come up to your door, knocking on your door, give you a big AAA movie, and then run away because they don't want it. They're moving on to the next thing. It really,
There are
really,
no consumer protections coming. I don't.
yeah.
I There's too much money being made. The companies that are in charge are too powerful. I don't see that. The one I really wonder about is Hulu, which has always been like in and out of financial trouble. So I wonder if that gets acquired or folded in or something like that. Like that Disney Plus and Hulu just merge into something. Um, and then like Paramount Plus feels like a flop to me. It is like I don't know anyone that subscribes to that regularly. So I think that one is kind of. I think there's a few of those that are on the fringe that are just in trouble. But I imagine we're going to come out of this with like Netflix, HBO, Apple because they have a gajillion dollars and can keep running it until the end of time. Prime and Disney being the ones that are that come out the other side of this.
Yeah. And speaking of Disney, this was also the year that the MCU really took off on TV. I had to Google it, and I forgot WandaVision didn't debut until January. So this year alone, uh, we not only have from the MCU the second biggest movie opening of all time in Spider-Man, but we had four Marvel shows already this year, not including the Star Wars stuff, Mando season 2 and Boba Fett coming out at the end of this year. You had WandaVision, Loki, Falcon Winter Soldier, and Hawkeye, and that's an incredible amount of storytelling in the MCU per year.
Is it too much? I think they're borderline too much. Like I This was the year that I started to be like, there's too much Marvel happening. I've enjoyed Hawkeye, I enjoyed Loki, I enjoyed WandaVision. Like What If started to get to me as like, I think there's too much. I think there's going to be Marvel overload. I think it already has happened for a lot of people, but I think it's really coming for me next year.
I wonder if the problem is that there are so many live action movies because I noticed Norm left out What If. And you look
Mhm.
at Star Wars by comparison, and they had The Mandalorian, which is universally acclaimed. I mean, and I would think, they might take some notes from that. Maybe I wonder if going forward we'll see fewer Marvel things. Although they've announced next year's slate, is it just as much?
It's just as many, but I think it's starting. They're starting with more unknowns. I think they had to start off strong with recognizable names like Hawkeye,
Yeah.
like Wanda, and like Loki, with these A-list actors. And then next year it's Moon Knight, Ms. Marvel, She-Hulk, with cameos of familiar faces. But I think it's kind of going to be a testing ground for those characters, to become start a supporting cast, leading in their own series, and then building up to appearances in the big films. Well, from streaming to steaming, the big tech hardware not out this year, but announced. But I think probably the most exciting piece of hardware announced was from Valve, and it's the Steam Deck. It could have been out by the end of the year. I know they say they're on track for their February launch, but I think this is the most exciting piece of hardware to get announced in 2021. What do you
Hmm.
think?
It's interesting. It's just a computer, and like that's interesting that it doesn't. It's like, okay, it's a computer you can bring with you, and you don't need to plug a joystick in, or not joystick, gamepad. I've been living in the '80s recently. Yeah, it's exciting, but is it really new? I don't know. It's interesting. I am excited to get mine, but I'm not like checking my email to see if it's been shipped or not.
Is that the biggest hardware announcement of the year to you? Like, I'm excited about it, but it's just a Switch that plays PC games. Like, I like
Well,
I like it reflects on how disappointing this year has been in hardware. That I think that's on the top of the list because it's not groundbreaking in terms of its hardware. It's it's groundbreaking because we're finally seeing the port. Oh, Norm's gonna fight back
I
on me.
disagree that it is groundbreaking. And then you could make the argument that from a technology standpoint, maybe the Apple M1 and M1X chips, which were announced last year, and I think that's probably the biggest hardware story of last year was Apple putting Mac OS on ARM in a confident way and succeeding, and then following up this year with their MacBook Pros. That's the dividends for that is going to change the dynamics between Apple and the chip makers and Intel, going forward. That's significant. But I think from a user standpoint, especially from a gaming standpoint, Steam Deck putting PC gaming in the library of Steam in a very targeted mass market way. Valve's ambitions for this are not niche in the way that VR maybe it was with the Index. They are going after people who would otherwise spend that money on an Xbox, the PlayStation, or a Nintendo Switch, or maybe have one of those. And they're putting a lot of effort, and their considerable resources into making that user friendly. It's enthusiast designed hardware in a way that only Valve can do it, targeted in a mass market way. And I think that's why it's significant. And I think the right AMD partnership at this time with the nanometer processes that AMD has tapped into, far surpassing what we've seen in past generations. Being able to put that hardware in, yes, is still very beefy, portable. I think that is very notable.
I guess it remains to be seen. I will be very, very interested to watch the Steam Deck over the course of 2022. I wonder, will it be the massive success Valve's hopes it will be? Will it be the new dominant PC platform that really, makes the PC in certain ways compete with consoles that it hasn't before? Or is it just going to be the thing that collects dust that PC gamers take on vacation when they take one?
Let's make a prediction. What do you think? Like if all goes according to plan, let's say Valve is successful in supply chain, and the other big thing, of course, is continuing supply chain issues this year, not only in shipping but also chip manufacturing. That's going to be an ongoing thing for every electronics maker. But assuming supply chain, Valve is taking that into consideration, and it's the software part that they have more control over. That they've put enough engineering efforts into making a very user friendly experience. They put enough efforts into developer relations to make it, let's say, close to the friendliness of launching a game on Switch. Do you think Steam Deck at this price point, at this promised performance level, will have competitive legs against consoles? I
You
say
know,
yes.
I almost feel like, and this is gonna offend some people. I almost feel like it would have a higher chance of success if it were made by Epic, because E- because Epic is doing lots of stuff to promote their store, where they're releasing free games every week, like big
Mhm.
titles. And in order, you can install the Epic on the Steam Deck, but it's not like out of the box. And I don't know what kind of hoops you'll have to jump through in order to make everything run super smoothly. So, like, what the right now, like what PlayStation needs to do is match Game Pass,
Yeah.
and the Steam Deck doesn't have anything like that. I mean, they have lots of demos you can play. There's lots of free to play games, but they don't have like AAA $60 titles that you get for free. So it's going to be interesting to see if there's enough incentive for people to play this as a platform.
And Epic can afford to do that because they have a game that prints money. That's not even their primary business. They
Yeah.
Yeah,
license
but
an
they're
engine, they
burning that
make the
cash in
engine.
court against Apple. So
Yeah, and that's a that was legal in the legal world. That was a massive tech story this year. But you're right. I think going back to subscription models being the big business of the past couple of years rather than a la carte. We used to say Steam printed money because it was the killer app for gaming. Everyone had it. Valve takes their cut. We do see a world now where Epic has moved in very strongly with paid exclusives, timed exclusives, and also just being able to give games away as long as you download the client without even a subscription model. I agree that if Valve had a Game Pass like PC equivalent, and that takes a lot more publisher negotiations and a lot more sunk costs, and I don't know if they would have that money to bolster it, but that would be an incredibly powerful, viable business to
Yeah.
pay $300 for a great piece of hardware, and then at a reasonable rate of a Game Pass like subscription to get the PC gaming equivalent of that. Damn, that would be cool. I love it. Love that idea. From chip shortages, and of course, Windows 11 launched this year on the PC. Speaking of Steam Deck being a PC, I'd say the most notable thing about Windows 11 is how uneventful this launch was. Yes, there were marketing dollars. Yes, we saw ad campaigns. People upgraded, but it felt for a big new integer update to Windows, it felt almost as just routine as an iOS or a Mac OS update, an annual update.
Mm. Yeah,
I
I
still
guess.
haven't even installed it. I couldn't
Yeah.
have been bothered to flip the BIOS switch so that I could actually install it.
Yeah, I'm with
And
Kishore on this one. They haven't released Seinfeld in the correct aspect ratio, so
that's
I'm
right.
still holding
That's
out.
right. Yeah, thanks Netflix. Thanks. And then the last two things in the science world, we had not only the landing of Perseverance. That was also this year, guys. Another rover on Mars, plus a drone deploy, a rover aircraft carrier on Mars that launched a flying drone. That was this year. That's unbelievable. But maybe overshadowed a little bit by the commercial and private space flights that launched this year. William Shatner went to space. You had NFL players went to space one day, came back and broadcast and commentated on an NFL game that Sunday after. Japanese billionaires, Bezos and Richard Branson went to space. You had the Inspiration 4 flight. Like it hasn't become routine, but a lot of it happened this year. It all culminated.
So Perseverance, amazing. Space tourism, I feel conflicted about for so many reasons, including the forever gif in my head of Jeff Bezos's reaction on TV. But I think you're off the board. I'm going off the board with my science story of the year that we didn't talk enough about. And it was actually from DeepMind. It was the AlphaFold project that used AI to predict the folding of different proteins, and they showed that that was more accurate than experimental techniques that have ruled the day. What that potentially unlocks in science for years to come, I think, is going to be more impactful than the idea of a few people going to the edge of space or even a rover landing on Mars, because we have done both of those things before. What we haven't done is this new frontier.
How long do you think someone in a lab will have a generalized AI that actually computes, thought and can communicate with people? How
Like full
long?
on GLaDOS?
Yeah. How long do you think there will be in an office someone that has that between that period of time and the public knows about it? How long will that gap be?
Oh, interesting. I still think we're pretty far away from
Mm-hmm.
generalized AI, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the gap will be short because I think if you get to that point where you're close, how are you going to keep that secret? Unless it's a private company. Because if it's an academic lab, it won't be secret. If they just can't keep secrets at all. So I would say maybe like a year tops from once we get there, but I don't think it's close.
All right. I don't have anything to say about that, but I'll trust you on that. I'll trust your prediction. And then one final thing, because we do have to wrap it up, is the metaverse. I think that came toward the end of this year, and maybe the biggest question mark. We've felt it, it's less so an announcement and more so a kind of uh, obviously a focusing on the direction of where Facebook is going as they announced at Connect. It has brought with that just considerable awareness into the mainstream of the idea of the metaverse and of all its different interpretations. It's so early still in terms of what this means and what form it will take. That This is maybe the biggest unknown. Like, one, will it happen? And two, will it happen in any way that looks similar to what they showed in Connect? And so maybe we'll leave with just a prediction here. The metaverse, is it any is the version, if any version of this metaverse that now Meta announced, is that on the horizon? Is that anytime soon, or is this still another 10 years out?
I think Keanu Reeves said it best when he said, "Can we just have metaverse not be invented by Facebook? It's way older." I'm just like, come on, man.
Yes, I take that point. I take what you're saying, and I don't think I think I think we have to get over this, them leading the way or this announcement. But I think that what they've done in this announcement is brought that question, like brought
Come,
that awareness.
dude, what are you talking about? First of all, Facebook is nowhere near being at the forefront of the metaverse, even in VR.
Right,
Like,
right. But I'm saying, but by making that announcement, they've
mhm.
brought it into the collective awareness, and they've put and companies that otherwise did not have interest now suddenly have interest because they see, a path is being laid forward. Maybe the path was there already. Many companies, Apple included, Google included, are well on that path. But now, they've shown their cards as get on board. We're leading this their way, and so is it too early? Did they show that card too early? Even though for us, people following the tech, we know this is where it was all going to go, but they put it out there into the mainstream.
I'm not even sure like how we're defining metaverse here. Like, is it the 3D, virtual reality version of a mud? Is it like, is it a Discord server, but we're all there together and we can like play games? I mean, it's like I don't
That
understand.
sounds
Like,
terrible. That sounds terrible. Like
it's
joint Discord server with everyone on it.
we want to have like one world where we can all get together and do things. Is that like a shared operating system? I mean, we're it's a concept that barely even exists in two dimensions as like a single place that people go to be together and then do things. Like, if humanity wanted that, it would already exist. We have decided as a people that we want an internet that has various destinations that we can all go to on our own accord and play there together. We don't want a single communal space. But people have made great games that have sort of become that. Rec Room is like, I think the has succeeded the most in that space. But that's not like, Rec Room isn't where everyone goes to play VR games. It's where you go to do Rec Room. So I don't
And
know.
and so maybe that's the question, right? Will virtual spaces, we'll call them, will they exist more in isolation as they currently do in various scales? Rec Room, any multiplayer game you could call it, right? Any from Halo to Rec Room to VR chat to Discord, these are all virtual spaces. People interacting with different inputs, different ways. That's how the internet works right now. Will that continue to be the way the internet works, or will there be some type of interoperability with some type of shared, you know, uh, medium, at least for VR, in the next couple of years? Will people be able to feel like they're going seamlessly from a rec room to a VR chat because of underlying technologies, or are they best kept separate because of market forces, because of the way things now will naturally evolve? That I think is the question I'm asking.
Dude, I don't know.
That's a perfect way to sum up this year, dude. I
Yeah.
don't know. There you go.
I was gonna
I
say
don't
that's
know
the
either.
saying for the year.
Yeah. Fun things to think about. It feels like not a lot happened this year. At the same time, a lot did happen this year. And we're going to keep on carrying on until 2022. That wraps it up for our podcast, our last podcast of 2021. We'll be back in the new year to recap the holidays. Hopefully, you out there have wonderful holiday time with holidays with your family and your loved ones. And I think just we'll sign off by saying, be safe and be kind to each other.
Yeah, I'll add to that and say, stay safe out there. Wear a good mask. Take responsible actions. Enjoy yourself. Enjoy your family. But most of all, know that spring is coming. I know I got some pushback around that for being too optimistic, according to some people that DM me, but I still remain optimistic about our collective future, except that like common Discord idea. I don't like that at all.
We can have each of our own channels. Just want to see what you're streaming, sure. Jeremy, any last words for the year?
Well, just that, if you're spending time with, young children who are at times ungrateful around the holidays, or if you're going to see in-laws and that's rough, just remember that even baby Jesus pooped in his diaper. And when he did, Mary and Joseph said, "Holy shit."
Wow. There you go. Way to end it on a dad joke. Make up for it, Jeremy, next year, showing us more of that puppy. People want to see more of the puppy. I see it's fence in the background. So
yeah, we'll do. We'll do.
Yeah. All right. Have a wonderful
That joke made
end of
me
the
want to
year.
say more than ever. Dude, I don't know.
Have a wonderful new year, and we'll see you in 2022. Take care, everyone. Bye. Hi there. I didn't see you.
That's it.
How are you guys doing?
Doing well. My cat is having issues. Kept me up from most of the middle of the night. Won't stop urinating everywhere in the house.
urinating.
Like everywhere. So we put her in the bathroom, and then she like cries the whole night and starts scratching at the door.
Oh.
Took her to the hospital. Like we can't help you. Give us $800.
Wow.
It's no good. It's no good. No good.